Chapter 2. Ship Log of the Libertad. The Libertad harbors briefly in La Florida and here boards 15 unusual Indians, 3 men and 12 women. According to the manifest, this small matriarchal delegation of Native Americans has requisitioned audience with the sovereign of Spain requesting repatriation to another region. Only these 15 souls survived destruction of their village by a local disaster. They bear little characteristic to North American Indians Velasco has seen over the past decade since his appointment as captain of the Libertad. Almost they remind him of the Norse people around Scandinavia encountered on an earlier voyage through the northern straits. Yet, they are also variant, a mixture of genetics not displeasing, only different. As this vagabond company crosses timidly the extended gangplank, one of the women arouses his attention, with eyes as a topaz sky seen in spring off the coast of Iceland, and hair with streaks of auburn red burning in the morning light. More than just her eyes and hair, but something alluring about her entire demur, which makes him think about his mother. This as far as the man of austere discipline will allow himself to imagine. She is, after all, just another passenger, he the captain of this ship. These are rules of the maritime. Laws he has taken personal oath to preserve and legislation he must live by. Without further reflection, Jacob allows this woman of unique character to pass, dutifully registered as any other cargo on the listed inventory. Accompanying the party is a Franciscan friar named Miguel, acting as their official representative. After the interview, he plans to retire to his home in Portugal. Captain Velasco studies the details of the manifest with detachment. He has transported Indians and friars before. The cargo makes little difference. Something about this friar makes him uncomfortable, something for which there is no particular reason. Maybe the way their eyes lock on the day this older man steps aboard the Libertad, eyes deep and unflinching that do not waver upon contact. Is this a true man of God, or just another crafty zealot in sheep's clothing? Velasco has met all types. Yes, he determines in himself to keep an eye on this one. 100 nautical miles off the coast of Bermuda, the spectral hand of a storm reaches out and snatches the Libertad, dragging her over mountains of waves and into dreadful deep troughs of dark diluvium valleys rarely witnessed by living men. The strong Basque-built galleon resists defiantly the Goliath elements, Captain Velasco stationed at the helm resolutely determined. Above the roar of wind and waves, thunder of his voice snapping orders. In minds of all, he is vision of weathered Prometheus grasping firmly the wheel, etched indelible in streams of violent lightning. He knows particularly well the danger of having so heavy a cargo, knows that the slightest shift in the load might gut the belly, spilling all their lives into the deep. When there seems no end to the stalemate, the sea suddenly relaxes its death grip on the floundering vessel. The waves changed calm, too calm, the air breathless and pressingly hot. Off in the distance, shivering sheets of splintered sky pulse beneath canopy of ominous dark clouds dancing into zenith of a receding horizon. Here lifelessness, the waters change to oil, void of current or even wind to fill the sail. The Spanish galleon, Libertad, now stranded and left for dead in a sea of rotting vines. These be waters of the damned, spits Luis Fernando, first mate of the Libertad. We have been cursed, Captain. Luis Fernando has heard tales of such a sea. A sea without wind and with little current, a legendary tangle of ships wandering treacherously slow through the Atlantic called Sargasso. Even the name conjures up the worst kind of image, nightmare of all seafaring men to imagine this Hades of crawling weeds thick with rotting bodies grinding together, becoming a mesh of sharp splinters made from broken masts and crushed hulls. A graveyard of ill-fated vessels swallowed down throats of tempests and spat out into this rotting death in life realm. Here even the air oppressive with odor of decay. In his heart, he believes there is a reason to their present predicament, believes the captain somehow responsible. Long sweltering day changes into hot breathless night with only the dry creaking of the stressed hull indicating motion of time. They continue to drift ever deeper into the thick black-green swill, until finally, on the evening of the second day, the Libertad ceases to move at all, now trapped in a pane of stained glass stretching into a crimson sky. On the morning of the third day, Captain Velasco orders the skiff lowered and manned by the second mate, along with 6 strong able bodies, to begin rolling by shifts. Ever so slowly, the heavy galleon begins to inch forward again. At the 12th hour the rudder locks, her keel stuck fast in a knot of underwater vines. The Libertad imprisoned by links of an unbreakable chain from deep below. One of the oarsmen dives down to inspect the situation, never to resurface. Next morning, the second mate, a stout middle-aged man born in the Netherlands, defiantly volunteers to venture into the depths. Moments later, he rises to the surface screaming in pain, a garland of poisonous coral snakes coiled around his neck. "What did you see down there?" Luis Fernando demands unceremoniously, glaring angrily into the dying man's eyes. "We are snared in tentacles of an evil hand," the seaman cries deliriously. "This ship and crew will never see the coast of Spain again." Captain Velasco orders the friar brought on deck to say last rites and to make supplication for all souls aboard. The situation hopeless, all they can do now is pray for a miracle. In his heart, Jacob does not believe in miracles, but he will pray for one all the same. Miguel has not laid eyes upon the shores of his native Portugal since many years. He longs for the pleasant breeze sent from the mountains of Serra da Estrela during the wine season, the currents dipping into the rich fertile Douro Valley where he grew up. Another lifetime ago, he lived peaceably in his father's home, content to tend the vineyard passed from father to son since many generations. That was before an appointed governor of Imperial Spain took the vineyard as his own, forcing young Miguel and his father to labor for wages. Even then Miguel content to remain, until one faithful day the Holy Spirit courses through his mortal being, calling him away to a service more pressing than attendance to the needs of already cultivated gardens. He wonders how fares the child of his only sister, a boy much like himself before detaching from worldly affection and embracing a vow of fellowship. That boy fully grown now, blessed with a pretty wife, sons, and daughters of his own. Miguel wonders if he might still find peace at the monastery of Santa Maria de Palmiro, wonders if the birds of summer continue to flock to the garden behind the main chapel. Would he even recognize his home after so many years, and would it still be home in his heart? Miguel's eyes fasten on those of the captain as he passes. Here is an austere man, whose mortal soul grounded in the keel of his ship. He sees this also that first day upon boarding the Libertad. He does not judge or condemn this man's mortal position. Captain Velasco snared in a web of greater design, like all men dedicated to an earthly purpose. Yet, there is something about this captain of the seas that stirs his spirit. In contrast, Miguel is a simple man, a man touched by a divine calling at an early age, chosen to separate himself from the cares of humanity. He joins an ascetic order to fulfill a longing in his soul. In truth, he does not believe in many of the self-righteous decrees accepted by church authority, nor does he believe in the many worldly interpretations of doctrine to justify the politics of greed. Therefore, Miguel seeks permission to transport the living gospel he knows to a people of different custom and different understanding, believing them a special congregation. Miguel is acutely aware that he is their prophet sent by the hand of God for a purpose he has yet to learn, a bearer of good news to preach salvation in the face of animalism, and to break through the shroud of obscure ritual mediated by shamans through superstitious conjuring. Therefore, this man of humble position, quickened by the Holy Spirit, comes in company of many missionaries to preach the gospel of deliverance and measured meaning in the worship of what these people on distant continent call their Great Spirit. This Great Spirit without name being the same Creator of heaven and earth, Father of all lights, revealed in the fullness of time to a world deceived, corrupted by desires of many fallen principalities and policies of ritual designed to conceal the testimony of truth most evident. Miguel has grown less religious in the face of present political dogmatism, but his faith revived greater than ever before. As a boy of only 17, Christ first appeared to him in a vision instructing him on what he must do. Since that day, he believes wholeheartedly in the power of love and faith, capable of reconstructing every matrix. In this present, he is only a servant made to serve. Now, after more than half a century, Miguel feels the need to return to his native soil, the land of his father and of his father's father, at least one last time. He considers also that perhaps this no longer his destiny to fulfill. Miguel looks up into the burning firmament of the sky and beseeches the Lord of heaven and earth to have mercy on the crew and passengers of this fated ship. Already the unfortunate sailor has succumbed to deadly poison coursing through his veins. Miguel can see contortions of fear in faces of the remaining crew, a fear of the unknown, the apprehension all living things feel when standing at the threshold of oblivion. Only then can a man grasp the truest meaning in being alive, only then might a man really question the authorship of his existence. Only Captain Velasco stands resolute in the face of peril, his penetrating stare transfixed upon some distant place in the flaming horizon. After a moment of silence, the skiff raised and secured. Ceremoniously, the corpse wrapped in sail canvas and swallowed into the belly of purgatory with setting of the sun. It goes against the principles of all to abandon even a dead man in this damned region. Now the only thing left to do is to wait and to pray. The atmosphere grows more brazen with each passing hour, the waters as the stench of death. Each evening, those deadly sea snakes slither boldly on the smooth oily surface like colorful strands of Medusa hair untangled from the depths below. Jacob can just make out her cruel visage, as she tugs with determined purpose the snared hull of the overloaded galleon changed to stone. But this is his ship. He just as determined to escape her gaping lair. Each night lightning scatters upon an ember horizon, shuddering evidence of a storm in progress, but not here. Somewhere a stiff ocean breeze moves across taut surface of a deep turquoise sea, but not here. Except for an occasional albatross, no other living thing ventures from the sky above or from the depths below. Sebastian, a young sailor on his first voyage, sits near the spar of the bow sharing a bottle of port with the first mate and two other sailors. They all knew the second mate well. Therefore, they drink to his memory. Grumbling in whispers, they blame the Basque captain, agreeing with the first mate that he somehow should have foreseen these events. Not because they believe him responsible really, only this excuse provides them with someone to accuse. Luis Fernando never particularly liked Captain Velasco, never cared much for the Basque. Even more personal, he does not like the man. This is their second voyage together, and to take orders from one he considers inferior turns in the first mate's gut. Luis Fernando feels he should have received a promotion by now and given his own commission. Not just the presence of this foreigner he dislikes, but the entire institution of authority represented through his appointment. Therefore, the disgruntled first mate of the Libertad drinks in the presence of men with similar natures as means to relieve at least a little of the bitter poison seething below the surface. Just before noon of the fourth day, Captain Velasco commands half their cargo of gold and silver dumped overboard. If there is any change, then he intends to be ready. This deliberate waste becomes more than the crew can bear. With Luis Fernando at the lead, they threaten a mutiny, ganging together at the foot of the poop deck. Velasco stands unflinching, his two elegant pistols drawn. These weapons, once belonging to his father, smelted from elements mined at foot of the Pyrenees. "No, Captain, you are mad," the first mate cries. "The Empire will have all our heads, and yours in particular. I am captain of this ship, and my orders will be carried out without question." Leaping down on the main deck, he stares fiercely into Luis Fernando's small beady eyes. "Are you going to perform your duty, first mate?" Velasco knows Luis Fernando is a coward, and nape of the serpent's hood. The first mate hangs his head and looks away. "Do as the captain has ordered, and waste half the king's treasure into gut of this hell." From inside his cabin, Velasco can hear their murmurs of discontent throughout the day. These Spaniards consider it unnatural to throw minted gold and silver into the unfathomed depths of the sea. Nevertheless, this moment they will do his bidding. His orders now the only thing left for them to perform, even if those orders contrary to personal conviction. By evening the water line of the 500-ton galleon rises by 20 feet. She will be in event that a good wind blows. Rumor begins circulating among the crew that it is because of presence of the chained demon locked in the cargo hold this curse has come upon them. Several of the men draw lots and would have broken down the door were it not for intervention by Friar Miguel. Although small in stature and meek in spirit, he positions himself between the chamber threshold and mob of angry men. He looks older than his years because of poor nourishment and bouts of malaria. Nevertheless, Miguel's faith stands emboldened in the face of these men's fear. "You must refrain from this murder," pleads the friar calmly, barring the way. "Be not as this heathen held captive here, ready to shed blood out of superstition. If there be some hope for this man's soul, then let God decide. God has already decided. This evil must be cast overboard to appease the soul of this place," implacably growls Luis Fernando. The friar fearlessly turns to the first mate entrusted with the key, looking steadfast into the other man's frightened eyes. "Open this door and let me through. If I should come out of my own accord, then it is because angel of the Lord has performed a miracle. If not, then do as you will." Armed only with his Latin Bible, Miguel enters alone to face the monster. He has never seen a real embodied demon before now. He believes from passages found in the scriptures that such phenomenon exists, but in this life little expected to come face to face with such a spirit. Here stands a creature like no other. The eyes those of a fierce jaguar, shot through with blood, eyes that follow his every move. Crouched as a mountain, scarred with cut and burn marks by a lifetime of self-mutilation, his fierce eyes watch intently the smaller man's every move. He has a face broad from cheekbone to cheekbone, void of distinct feature. A countenance only vaguely human, and with flared nostrils that stink of decay. His head pushed down slightly, cocks to one side because of a hump on his back from a badly healed collarbone broken by the weight of some heavy presence when he was only a child. Before changed into this monster from South America, the monster once a young boy born to a prominent family living in the region called Girona, Brazil, along the Zinc River. According to local custom, it became the duty of his parents to sacrifice the child to serve as high priest to a capriciously cruel local god named Sinat, later becoming this ferocious demon-possessed creature with strength of 20 men. Only those unique individuals born with special intuitions receive the appointed position of this kind of shaman, a guardian over an ancient evil treasure dedicated to the possessions of bloodthirsty gods. This particularly unique prodigy one of the strongest ever captured in the rainforest of deeper jungle. According to official reports, it takes an army of fit soldiers to subdue him. Those sent on this terrible mission claim he had power to change hanging vines into poisonous snakes and to cause burning hail to rain from heaven. Spawns of inhuman warriors resembling frogs leap out of shadows to his defense, slaughtering many. Those Spanish soldiers that survive testify that these unusual beings emit haunting battle cries sounding strangely like singing, a macabre chorus slithering out of shades in a nightmare they will take to their graves. There is no doubt in Miguel's mind that all these accounts true. Just as Moses had stood with a raised staff before Pharaoh and his dark magicians, so he must stand now. As in the days of the prophet Daniel, delivered from the mouths of hungry lions, so shall this deliverance be according to God's will. The friar prays for strength, prays to be an instrument of the Holy Spirit. Armed by this faith alone, Miguel faces the demon. The creature jumps up, rising to a height of nearly 7 feet. The heavy chains binding both arms strain against the force, and seem weak elements compared to the enormity of his strength. Miguel first removes the pewter cross that always he wears around his neck, holding his worn Bible in the other hand. The friar steps boldly toward the creature, raises the cross and begins to adjure the demon, charging that it departs in the name and blood of the resurrected Christ. This only agitates the native even more. He begins to pant, growling as he pulls at the chains with increased fervor. Miguel steps even closer, until the brimstone stench of the creature's hot breath nauseating, feeling on his face like the very fires of hell. He reaches up, touches the protruding brown brow, and again adjures the demon. The shaman screams in fitful agony, collapsing lifeless to the floor of his cage. A breathless pause in eternity, silence, followed by groans from deep within the ship. The dead man opens his eyes and leaps suddenly up with tears streaming along his disfigured face. He then begins singing in a most beautiful language, a heavenly chorus Friar Miguel has heard often through course of his spiritual life. Akoni, the man cries, reaching up into heaven with his hands open wide, Akoni. Miguel understands only a little of the dialect spoken by the local tribes of the southern continent prior to the arrival of the Spanish and Portuguese. He wonders within himself what the word Akoni could mean. Is it the true name of this man, or perhaps the place of his nativity? Miguel baptizes his new brother in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, humbly sprinkling his misshapen head with water, embracing the one named Akoni, as a new brother reborn by the same grace of salvation. Brother Akoni, we have much work to accomplish, he says, placing his hands on the mountain of this weeping man's shoulder. To those outside there appears a flash of light from the cell within, then a blood-curdling screech, which makes their knees weak. The first mate rushes in, his axe poised over his head, the fearful crew cowered behind him. All are witness to a most extraordinary sight. The restraining chains have fallen away of their own accord, the terrible monster imported from the jungles of South America knelling as a child peaceful at the friar's feet. The merciful Lord has delivered this man from demonic torment and the bondage of sin, Miguel affirms, placing his hands on the shoulders of the sobbing giant. Know that every hair on his head is now precious. No physical harm shall befall him. A sudden shiver shudders through the timbers of the vessel, followed by a cracking noise that vibrates along the keel. The Libertad is in motion. All hands rush on deck, apprehensive to the meaning of this unexpected change of events. Come Akoni, let us go up together to witness another miracle performed by the Lord this day. The eastern sky now changed to cobalt blue, a chimera boiling out of the deep. Giant Neptune stands menacingly above the distant horizon wielding a fiery pitchfork. Captain Velasco appears instantly at his post, snapping orders to raise sail and steer course of the wind. The waves continue building with intensity, ripping the Sargasso in twain, damaging the rudder gears in the process. Navigation will be difficult, but at least the Libertad free at last. Captain Velasco grabs hold of the wheel, aided by a young strong sailor named Sebastian. He reminds Jacob of himself once upon a time when he thought to tame the very elements in nature. Together they will steer the Libertad through Hell's Gate if need be. Spat from purgatory and clenched in jaws of another storm, the sturdy galleon fights valiantly to stay in front of the violent elements. For a day and a night, an irresistible southwest wind drives the Libertad blindly without a course through shroud of thick twilight, neither light of day, nor dark of night. Then the wind changes abruptly, howling from the north, the crippled vessel now forced to follow along an uncertain tact. On eve of the third day, the tempest begins somewhat to subside, the waves less fierce. Land spotted leeward. Voice of young Sebastian cries out. Captain Velasco decides to make for a narrow channel to port in the hope of finding harbor from this raging tempest. Giving orders to raise all sails, he commits the galleon to this exploit. Captain Velasco and Sebastian hold steady the wooden rudder arm, struggling to maintain a steady tact. Several hundred yards from shore, the Libertad grounds fast, stranding upon the shoal of quicksand. The forward mast snaps in two, signifying the back breaking with an agonizing shudder. Now fearing the worst, the Libertad crew begins a planned mutiny by frantically lowering the skiff, determined to abandon ship. Already they have agreed to leave behind the Indian delegation, the friar, and the shaman. Instinctively, Captain Velasco bars their way, his two pistols cocked and ready. After a tense standoff, he lowers his weapons, silently allowing the frightened mutineers to pass. He knows the Libertad dead. He could easily have chosen to depart with these men, only constrained by bond of a greater vow. He has sworn a maritime oath shared by every sea captain, never to abandon ship for as long as another living soul remains aboard his vessel. As it turns out, the first mate and 2 other sailors, one being the impressionable young Sebastian, have conspired together to salvage each a bag of gold coins, thereby missing the planned exodus. They call out belligerently to the overloaded skiff, as it appears and disappears between swelling troughs, altogether vanishing, swallowed into a fold of sea and mist. "Captain, you must allow the Indian delegation on deck," Miguel implores. "There are men and women, and it is God's divine will that all be spared." "Do as you will," Jacob says despondently. "They are no closer to land below deck or above. Allow them to prepare as they see fit. They are no prisoners of mine. There is but one God over land and sea, and but one captain over the Libertad. I will perish with no innocent blood to stain my conscience. By the morrow we may all circle together with angels of the deep. Take heart, Captain Velasco, power of the Lord I serve is able to still even storms of the sea. I believe it his will that we shall not perish, not your remaining crew, nor those people in the hold of this ship. Yes, get them all above decks." Then looking up at the disfigured giant at the friar's side, Velasco adds, "Even this silent creature may be appointed our taskmaster on the day of reckoning." The timbers of the Libertad continue to strain against violent crushes of wave after wave rolling over the poop deck. Still the well-designed galleon manages to resist splintering into pieces, thanks in greater part to the lightened load. On this last eve Miguel and his new companions spring into the cargo hold of the lowest deck and begin urging the frightened passengers to seek refuge by following them outside. The women, cold and shivering, huddle together because of more than a foot of water that has begun to seep through the cracked hull. The 3 men, only adolescents, leap forward prepared to attack. Upon seeing terrible presence of the shaman looming behind the missionary priest, they hesitate. "Fear not, my children, we are here to help you," Miguel tries to explain, learning only a few fragmented words of their unique language during the early weeks of first contact. "We must all take strength of one another. For the Lord has delivered the soul that you see standing behind me now from the furry jaws of hell. Surely, he did not save this man just to die. And if by faith even one delivered, then belief in the same power all shall be delivered." One of the Indian women hastily begins to translate, encouraging her frightened clan to follow the friar and South American to the upper deck. Her name is Amadahi, the appointed spokesperson for the group because of her knowledge of spoken Spanish. It is Amadahi, who has interceded on behalf of the delegation since arriving at the fort of La Florida. "Shaleshianu," she says to her clansmen. "Shaleshianu," each repeat. A consensus of agreement reached, as they become immediately more at ease, passing sheepishly between this fearful giant from another continent and the kind friar they trust. Miguel has heard this spoken word, Shaleshianu, often during his months of association with these people, without fully comprehending the meaning. A definition, he has yet to learn. Emerging into openness, the party faces conditions all too familiar. They witness a vortex of churning waves and cold pelting ocean spray, conditions remembered the night the great storm pounced upon their village. Great walls of crashing water dredged from the deep, washing away all that they knew. Only these few boys and several women left to tell the tale. Only these few survivors remain out of a village population of more than 300 souls. Finding shelter near the poop deck and persuaded by the man of God to consume nourishment, they eat a last supper in preparation of what is to come. The giant from South America looms over the congregation as a guardian spirit that still makes them feel apprehensive. Nevertheless, they trust the friar, who continues to stand with them through many perils, and in the judgment of their appointed representative, Amadahi. Miguel next goes to the captain determined to convince him and his few remaining crew members to do the same. "Captain Velasco, I have had a vision that every remaining soul aboard this fated vessel shall surely not perish tomorrow. But it is necessary that you and your men take food this night for tomorrow's need of strength. This night Jacob Velasco feels mortal to the core, as much broken as his ship. He is just a man now, a man with many thoughts, but with so little faith. Always he has believed in powers he can see, in mastery of experience and wind on the open sea. He has heard how this friar cast out the demon. Now sees with his own eyes the changed creature, no longer that terrible fiend from South America brought aboard his ship. Such a miracle is beyond his understanding. Yet here evidence of that miracle, a monster changed benevolent standing in the flesh. Therefore, the practical captain of the sea accepts this phenomenon without further question, just as he accepts the chain in command, and just as he accepts the winds favorable or contrary. Therefore, in accordance to the friar's instructions, Captain Velasco gathers his few remaining men and commands them to eat a last meal of dried fish. If tomorrow comes at all, the morning will be dawn of the last day or necessity for living strength. As predicted, a particularly violent surge sweeps over the poop deck at early light, crushing the stern of the Libertad, a splintering crackling noise that rips through the doomed vessel. The strong maiden of the sea finally gives up the ghost and begins breaking apart, sending a stream of debris composed of dismembered timbers racing toward the shore. Miguel, poised near the sinking bow, raises his hands toward heaven, commanding all to grab hold of anything that will float. The water, less tumultuous now, pushes toward shore, streaming in the direction of a beach north of the channel opening. The South American embraces pieces of the shattered hull and begins kicking mechanically toward the shore with three weaker folk clinging tightly to his broad shoulders. Friar Miguel secures three empty vegetable crates, shared by the female interpreter and another woman at his side, with arms of a teenage boy clutched around his neck. The first mate and the two crewmen have prepared empty wine barrels on the preceding night, sealing their bags of gold coins inside, and use these as buoys of escape. Captain Velasco is last to abandon ship. Securing a few of his ship's logs, along with the scroll of the prophet Isaiah given to him by his mother, he wraps these in a watertight satchel, respectfully makes the solemn sign of a Basque seaman in honor of a proud ship once under his command, a maritime tradition for as long as there are captains and their ships. He then launches into the swift tide, grasping a slab of floating wood once half of his private dining table.